What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Dare Route YouTube channel. Today's show is going to be a little bit different and just kind of talking about Dynasty. So, what we're going to be doing is Dynasty draft strategy. So, one thing that I really like to do, and I've been trying to do this throughout the off seasons, is give you guys different ways you can build teams. Because as the Dynasty season's going, it's like, hey, how do I build this roster? It's before the NFL draft. What kind of draft strategy is out there right now? A lot of guys are building through just wide receivers. There's zero running back. There's anchor running back. There's, robust running back. There is, go grab those two elite quarterbacks, be at the super flex position. There's so many different ways to draft teams. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk about my favorite way to build a dynasty roster, and that's an anchor running back. I'm going to show you, hey, what does it mean? We're going to go through profiles of guys. I'm going to give you guys actual anchor running back targets. And I did a draft recently, a real mock draft, to show you guys how you could build a roster. I'm going to give you guys that. I'm going to show you kind of how you can build it through 12 rounds and what it looks like. So if you like Dynasty, if maybe you're kind of dipping your toes in Dynasty, or you want to see a new way to maybe build a team in Dynasty, hang out of the channel when the intro is going. You know the deal. Hit that like and subscribe button. And on the other side, we're going to dive into how you can build an elite Dynasty roster. All right, let's get started. So this is, when I'm talking about Dynasty, there's so many different ways that you can build Dynasty rosters. And it's a lot of fun to that's what the fun about Dynasty is. Now, in terms of this, so when we're talking about what Dynasty looks like for us, we're looking at Dynasty draft strategy, anchor running back, but we're looking at 12 teams, Superflex, PPR, and tight end premium. So a little bit of a tight end premium as well. So that's kind of the roster build we're looking at here when we're talking about how to kind of go over these guys and what does that look like. But let's get into what this means, what it looks like, and go from there, right? So what does anchor running back mean? So you might hear hero running back too. I know some people talk about that, or modified running back strategy, but essentially anchor running back strategy just involves drafting one running back in the first two startup rounds, right? Depending on how the draft goes. Now we're going to talk about in this episode, like what is going for value. So sometimes you used to be able to grab a quarterback that's pretty good in that second round. But right now in Superflex, quarterbacks going very, very fast and quick. So right now it's going to grab a running back probably in the second round. And then you stack other positions until like rounds 8 through 10, and you look for that second running back. So really anchor running back, and Sam Wallace is a good friend. He works for MV Fantasy Life. And he does the exact same strategy. Me and him are very like-minded in terms of what the strategy looks like. And I trust him because Sam's very smart. We actually did a running back show on the channel, on a live show. And we kind of broke this down together. So let's go through what it is, right? So let's talk about what you look for in an anchor running back. So what's the profile that you look for? So for me, like the way I look at it is I'm looking for an anchor running back, a guy that can be on my roster for 3 seasons, that holds his value, right? So when you're looking at that, you're looking at a guy that's going to be able to have long-standing value. Now, I know some people have kind of gone back on this, like, do you really build a dynasty roster for 3 seasons? And I don't know if it's 3. If for running backs, it might be 1 or 2, right? So when you look at it from that perspective, you're hoping that you can draft a running back that has 2 to 3 year value. And I understand the running back position is yearly, but if you're drafting an anchor running back, we're talking about elite running back that we're going to get into, right? So understanding kind of where that looks like, and then understanding age cliffs. So when you go through the stats, and Dave Wright, FF Spaceman, is someone that's done a lot of stats for me and charts for me, you're looking at, okay, who finishes higher in PPR? Like what age does it look like? And based on what we have seen basically top 5 finishes from 23, 24, and 25 is the highest. So that age range, right? So you're looking at 23, 24, and 25-year-old running backs. They finished the highest in terms of top 5 and top 12 finishes in football. So you need to understand those age cliffs, right? So if you're looking for an anchor running back and a dynasty team, you're looking at the age 22, 23, 24. And then there's other areas that you want to go in there, but 24 is kind of on the high end when you're looking at like, hey, where's that age cliff at? It's at 25. Most running backs you're going to try to get off your roster at 25, 26. There's always outliers, right? We talk about Eckler, we talked about these guys, but when you're looking for anchor running backs, that's what you're thinking of. Okay, these guys, hey, value for 3 seasons. I can move them around if I need to. They're going to hold that value, and they're not going to hit that age cliff to 25 for at least 2 to 3 years, and preferably 3. But 2 is one of those ones ones where we can get away with it. And there's some guys we're going to talk about that. But understand your windows too. Like understand like when you have to get out. And it's always good to get, if you want to ride that peak production until 25, it's always good to sometimes to get them off a year earlier. Like if you can move and go try to find another anchor running back. So anchor running back is a good startup strategy, but it also can be a strategy that you continue to use throughout your dynasty life, your dynasty team, by just going out and acquiring and stuff. So when you know the profile, you could still do anchor running back. You still build around that anchor running back, but now it's not through a draft. Now it's through a trade or rookie drafts or whatever the case may be, right? Now, other things that you look at for, ideal profile here, volume is king. You want as much volume as you possibly can. So when you're looking at that, you want to make sure, hey, he's a 3-down guy that can, 3-down work, pass catching. You need that receiving ability. And when I broke down the numbers in terms of like, hey, what does it look like in terms of PPR? What are you looking for? In most leagues, you want a guy that can catch around 40 passes. So when you're looking at just numbers wise, 40 receptions, 45 in there, those are the guys that are going to finish high in your production range. So you can get that elite production from a 3-down back, first and second down, and in that 3rd down pass catching back, look for that 40 to 45 receptions, target range like 50, 55, 60. That's what you're looking for from an anchor running back profile. Now, I also will say red zone touches. Like we know that guys split time, and in the NFL is going to a lot of split backs. So split backfield. So what you got to look for is like, hey, who's getting the touches in the red zone? Because we know red zone scores points. Sometimes it's that easy. It's not that difficult, right? So volume is king. Receiving ability, look for that 40 to 55 catch range, when you're thinking of like where they're at, and then red zone touches, like all those things come into play, but elite, not just like, hey, he gets red zone touches, but he doesn't have that receiving ability. No, it needs to be the whole package. When you build around an anchor running back, it has to be the whole package or it's not going to work, right? Now, let's talk about what your team can look like when you're building. So I wanted to show you guys, generally speaking, now, every strategy, we can sit here and give you strategy, but every draft is different, right? So you have to take it with a grain of salt, like what that draft looks like. Now, I'm going to show you a draft that I did this in. So I'm going to personally show you that at the end of this video of like what this could look like. But generally speaking, this is where we go around and try to build a team around. So first round, quarterback 1, especially depending on where you're at. We'll talk about kind of what that looks like. But that number 1, I'm getting my super flex quarterback, the guy that I know I can build my team around as well. And hey, I'm going to have that. Then I'm going to grab my anchor running back in that 2nd round. Right now, if you grab an anchor running back, now there's a tier break though. So we're going to talk about that tier break is. There is a spot where you draft an anchor running back, and it's the 2nd round. Then my 3rd and 4th and 5th round, I'm going after my wide receivers. So I'm going to go target guys. So when I target guys, I'm going to show you, I'm targeting wide receiver 1s on their roster or that have the potential to be the wide receiver 1 that can earn as many targets as possible. You're looking at production. You're looking at, hey, offenses. You're looking at a whole package. And I'm looking for that in that 3, 4, 5th round. It's really, really important. Now, my quarterback 2, I'm trying to go around the 6th round unless it's a reach. So in my draft that you're going to see, it was kind of a reach in the 6th round. So I waited, and you're going to see what I did. And then you target that tight end 1. Now, this was premium. And so I kind of waited on tight end based on where the tiers are and the values at. But you want to target that tight end 1 somewhere around 5th or 7th. And then in the 8th, 9th round and 10th round, you look for your running back 2. Now, you don't reach on that running back 2, but you look for that running back 2. Now, the way I draft when I do these is I don't mind my running back 2 being the weakest part of my roster. So I do not mind that being like that weakest part of my lineup. When I set my lineup in August, if my running back 2 is the weakest part, I actually think that's a win for me based on how you build your rosters. Now, I will show you why right now. So I'm going to show you guys how, let's talk about this. So if you look here are the top 23 finishers. Like when we're looking at just overall for running backs, right? The points, and you see that. So as you get down, you're going to look here. So we know Eckler had a good game. This is PPR. Josh Jacobs, Christian McCaffrey were great. Derrick Henry, obviously, he's been there. Saquon, Nick Chubb. So it starts to go down a little bit. Then you get down to this bottom range, right? So let's look at the guys in the bottom. You have Alvin Kamara. Hit and miss, averaging about 14.1 fantasy points per game. Then you look here. James Conner did average 15.4, but only had 13 games. Kenneth Walker kind of came on strong. Travis Etienne, you'll see that at 17. DeAndre Swift has not been good for fantasy managers, right? So he comes in at 21. Zeke came in at 22, and Devin Singletary came in at 23. So when you look at it, even Jerick McKinnon, I know that he played really well down the stretch, but when you're looking at those numbers and the points that they're averaging, your running back too. Like, imagine if you would have drafted some of these guys over these wide receivers that are coming up. So now when you look at the wide receiver position, look at how the top 24 finishes here, right? So when you see that bottom tier, they're still averaging like Cooper Kupp down there. Yes, he was injured, so that's kind of an ally, 22.4. But you still see, hey, 13.6 for Jerry Jeudy, 12.7 for Garrett Wilson, Michael Pittman, 13.5. T. Higgins, 13.8, 14.9 for Chris Godwin. And you see the overall finishes on the points over there. You're looking at about a 20 to 25 point swing. So when you look at that, it really favors wide receivers. So when you get into that low end wide receiver range, you're looking at probably 3 or 4 more fantasy points per game at that position. So based on your positional advantage, right? So based on those positional advantages, that's what you're looking at. And I've seen guys. So when you're looking at mock drafts, some guys reach on those second running backs really early. A couple of years ago, it was like Mike Davis was getting drafted ahead of Cooper Kupp, right? And we're going to look at like who's getting drafted in that spot now. So like to me, when you're drafting running backs in that dead zone from 5 to 6 to 7, that's kind of the wrong strategy. No, just keep grabbing, pounding those wide receivers. As you can see here, it's that positional advantage for you, and you can really take that next step there, right? Like you're going to be able to do that. So that's kind of how I would look at that position. I just want to show you guys how they finish. Now, on top of that, you're looking at dynasty trade values, running back versus wide receiver. Right now, the running back trade value out there is awful. So you draft a lot of running backs, it's going to be hard to kind of maneuver and get really top end value. Contenders will go get the running backs right now. And I see a lot of people talking about it in the middle of the year, but even then, running backs right now, unless they're elite, are almost like used cars. As soon as you drive them off the lot, they're losing value. Wide receivers tend to hold their value a little longer. Like when you think of dynasty rankings, I mean, look at this. Bijan is running back 1. And then if you look at the running back 1 or the, top 12 dynasty rankings from this year as compared to 2 years ago, it's a completely different list. It's completely changed. Kamara is maybe getting drafted running back 27, 28 now. 2 years ago, he's in the top 5, right? And you look at wide receivers, though, they tend to hold their value the same. CeeDee Lamb has held his value for 3 years, even though he just finally popped off last year. So there is a positional advantage with doing this based on also your dynasty leagues and how you trade, right? So there is, when you're looking at the anchor running back strategy, those things all come into play. Now, let's get into why you're here. Let's talk about some targets. So here are my 4 targets right now in terms of anchor running back targets, right? That fit the profile right now with at least a little bit, right? So Ken Walker's that, I don't want to say he's an outlier, but he's definitely like when we think of pass catching, he can do it. So when we were looking overall, we didn't, he did show some flashes last year with his pass catching, but nothing like popped off. He did have 27 receptions though, right? So we're looking at 40. He's close to there. Maybe he gets a little bit more in volume there, but really it's Bijan and Breece are my 2 top ones, right? If I can get both of one of those guys, anchor running back's the perfect strategy. In my mock, I did get Breece. So I'm gonna show you that here in a minute. Then Ken Walker and Jonathan Taylor. To me, those are the 4. Now, you could have thrown CMC in here. The issue with CMC is his age. Now, if you're going to do like a 1-year kind of anchor running back build, you could throw CMC. You're more than welcome to do that. And then you just churn and you hope you get somebody like I did. Like, so you could put CMC in here, but to me, these 4 hold their value for at least the next 2 to 3 years. You could build around them and you have a solid roster, right? That's what we're looking for anchor running back. So let me show you a recent mock we did, okay, and we had a bunch of guys, and I'm going to blow my team up here to show you this. But if you want to pause it, you can. Just to understand how the dynasties, mocks are going. You're looking at those quarterbacks; they're really going off the board fast, right? And then really, it's 2 or 3 wide receivers going there. It's Jefferson, Chase, and Lamb, and then you have the rookies going at 112, 201 there. So you'll see kind of how the quarterbacks getting valued, and so really there's a tier break after Prescott, and it is okay. Do I want Richardson, Tua? How's Trey Lance look? How's Daniel Jones? Like those places in there. So that's kind of how this looks. Now, let me go through my anchor running back bill with you. Let's talk about it. So I come around and I had 107. I was hoping maybe Lawrence was going to be there, but I'll take Justin Fields. I know there's some question marks about Fields overall, but if you can get him with a high rushing upside, look what Hurts did this last year. I know there's questions, so don't, come at me in the comments. But if you can get Fields with that upside from fantasy perspective, you have to smash that. Then coming around, I was looking for Bijan. So I really wanted to get Bijan here, but he went 2 picks before me. I went Breece Hall. So, okay, I have my anchor running back. Now, let's talk about my strategy, right? So we're diving into this. Now, you don't have to agree. That's the great thing about Dynasty. You do not have to say that this is an effective way, but I wanted to show you kind of how to build it. So I have Higgins there. So I took T. Higgins. Now, really, there was a wide receiver kind of, I don't want to say it's a tier break after Diggs and those guys, but Higgins, to me, when I'm looking at Higgins, he might move on from Cincinnati. Maybe he becomes the wide receiver 1 immediately on another team, right? He's going to be that guy. And you're like, hey, I can have Higgins, and then hey, he finds his roster, or he's a high-end wide receiver too with the Bengals offense, right? Probably moving on from Boyd. Mixon's probably not going to be there. Maybe he sees that increased usage. I came around and got Cooper Kupp. Now, you might say, hey, he's an older prospect. What are you trying to do with him? Cooper could be a wide receiver 1 next year, right? So when you're thinking of like, hey, building an anchor running back, I'm building to win next year, right? So I have Higgins, and then I have Cooper Kupp. If he can go back, and you saw his numbers on that previous screen, if he can go back and average that 20 to 21 to 22 fantasy points per game, you have a legitimate 1-2 there with Higgins and Kupp. Now, Breece is coming off an injury, so he's probably going to be slow started. So we'll talk about my strategy later for the running backs that I grabbed. But that's kind of how I looked at my first 4 picks. Then I'm not a big Judy guy, but Judy going at the 507. Remember, you're looking for wide receivers that have potential wide receiver 1 upside, right? Can go become a wide receiver 1 on their roster and earn those receptions. With Sean Payton there now in Denver, Russell Wilson hopefully battling back, Cortland Sutton may or may not be there. I think Judy could step in and be that wide receiver 1. If that's the case, you're still getting wide receiver 1 production. Then I stacked it, didn't really mean to stack it, but I got DJ Moore there. So when you're looking at those 4 wide receivers, the thing they have in common is they're probably going to be, outside of Higgins, the next 3 are going to have number 1 target potential, right? They're going to be on a roster, going to have that there. Higgins could do that if Chase has missed time, or if he gets moved on, he's going to be there. So you're looking at picks that you have. You have Breece Hall, who before the injury was legitimately a wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. You have Fields, who could be quarterback 1 in fantasy because of his rushing upside. And you have 4 wide receivers that could finish as number 1 wide receiver on their team, and 2 that have potential to be wide receiver 1s in fantasy, and then 2 very solid wide receiver 2s. That's kind of how you look at that positional advantage, right? Like when you're going to draft guys. Now, the quarterback that I grabbed in the 7th was Derek Carr. Not a lot of people love Derek Carr, but a lot of guys came off the board. So would you rather, so here's a question when you're building this, and you can go back and look, would you rather have like Jared Goff than DJ Moore and then come around and get like Christian Kirk, right? Or something like that? Or did you like how I'd build it, right? So you have Carr there. Now, my running back too, this is important. I took Cam Akers. Now, Cam is one of these ones that you're talking about like, all right, do you believe in his last 3 games? He could. The way I looked at drafting Cam here is that if he does step up and he's 23 only, right, you have a realistic young running back asset who could be a running back 2 that you can just plug and play as your weakest, link in this anchor running back build. You have Breece at running back 1, right? And you just build around those guys with these young wide receivers. That's kind of how you do it. So then I took a shot on Dalton Schultz. Now, I don't love Dalton Schultz as like a prospect, but in the 9th round in tight end premium, you take a shot on that guy. Could be the number 1 or number 2 target getter on the roster. I'll take that. Jalen Hyatt at the 10:06. Hey, could get first round draft capital, right? So when you're looking at that, I'll take the upside of the rookie picks at that level. I was going after Mike Williams or Mike Evans, but they went right before me. Had I maybe this been not a mock, trade back or trade up, get those guys. And then, hey, Sky Moore, I'll take the shot on Sky based on value. And hey, if he's there, could kind of explode in that KC offense. Maybe they're not going to move around a lot. Maybe he gets highlighted. And then I think Deontay Foreman is a great kind of late ad when you see it there. Like, hey, could just be a late ad on your roster. Who could have running back 2 upside, and that's kind of that 0 running back type build. So this is generally speaking how you build that. Now, after that, like I said in the team construction part, I didn't show everything. You just take upside running backs or best player available, right? And then some rookie stashes that you like, A.T. Perry, Mingo, some of these guys that are coming out there, and that's kind of how you build. So just to show you the board again, kind of how it looks. And you could stop it. Hey, do you like that? Like JC Dynasty right before me, he took a lot of quarterbacks, so he went the quarterback route, and people do that in those type of leagues, and just try, hey, in Superflex, grab that. But this is the anchor running back strategy. I hope it's kind of interesting. Maybe you build your profile around it. Let me know. Have you ever tried to build it? This is generally how I build my roster out, and then I just kind of fill and plug and play with best player available after this. So I appreciate you guys tuning in as always. I really, really do. Hit that like and subscribe button. Let me know how I'm doing. Let me know if you've ever tried this strategy in the comments. Until next time, we'll see you guys later.